Have you ever wondered if a narcissist was really caring or just pretending to be them? Today, we're going to learn more about the interesting world of narcissists' fake empathy and fake empathy that they put on. Do they really think they can understand how others feel, or is it all an act? Allow us to first explain what fake empathy means. A lot of you have probably been through this in your relationships, and it's important to know how it works. So what is pseudo-empathy, and how does it show up in the behavior of narcissists? Wait for it. We're about to break down these complicated factors to help you see what's really going on. Don't miss this. It is important to understand that it is not fully true to say that narcissists don't have any empathy. They instead show what might be called inconsistent empathy. Because they only use it when it suits their own wants, it becomes less real and more transactional. When they're feeling good, they show empathy, but it's usually more of an intellectual understanding, like saying, "I can see why you might feel that way," than an emotional kindness. They might notice that someone is sad, but not really care about them, missing the emotional link. This kind of empathy is like fake sweeteners. It looks like the real thing, but it doesn't make you feel better. What I call macro-empathy is another part of narcissistic behavior that has something to do with communal narcissism. This kind of empathy means feeling sorry for big groups from afar, like showing concern for people fleeing war or disasters. Even though they might argue about how unfair it is that some groups are treated unfairly, they often scold people close to them for talking about their own problems. They might ask, "How can you whine about your problems when people in other places are in real pain?" When they are really upset, a narcissist might act like they care a lot about world problems, but they will ignore, put down, or reject the feelings of the person right in front of them. From the outside, they may look caring, but they may be focused on other problems. I recently saw a clear case of this kind of fake macro-empathy. One person told me I wasn't giving narcissists enough credit and that I was too critical of them. In a strange way, I realized that my life has shown me how to give narcissists too many chances, and my poor mental and physical health is a sign of that. This person said I wasn't being kind enough and that I wasn't being open enough about narcissistic relationships. They said about 15 mean, hurtful things about me in the same breath, which I actually wrote down as it happened. I didn't miss how silly it was. Being on the phone, I was able to quietly roll my eyes and laugh without them seeing how I responded, which would have probably made them even more angry for a long time. During that talk, I didn't follow my own rules. I was defending and explaining my points of view instead of keeping a cool head. I gave them numbers and proof, but it felt like an unnecessary waste of time. Even though my data briefly shut them up, the conversation showed how their moral concern for narcissists was very different from their lack of compassion for me, a person they knew well. I was tired and felt like I wasn't good enough afterward. I started to question myself, asking, what if they're right? Am I wrong for calling these harmful behaviors out instead of allowing them to happen? But as I went through my emails later, I was aware of how important it is to keep teaching people about narcissistic behaviors and how bad they are. I'm not sure if the person I talk to is actually selfish, but I have a strong feeling that they feel bad about me even though they are still in my life. These people showed a lot of selfish traits and may have been looking for ways to hurt me. I have to say that narcissists often use this theme of fake pity for others, and the whole conversation was draining and boring. It's common for this fake empathy to sound moralistic and self-righteous, which turns it into a tool that puts down the experiences of those who are actually there. Isn't that a terrible idea? Making a cute teddy bear into a threat is like that. When someone is narcissistic, it's easy for them to show empathy for ideas or problems that don't affect them personally, because they see other people as tools for controlling their own emotions. They might use this fake empathy as an excuse to attack people close to them, thinking they are better because they care about problems far away. This fake pity can also make people more open to narcissists, as the person who said, "Oh, you're being so harsh towards narcissists," in my conversation showed. As a side note, I am one of the first people to admit that narcissistic people can change if they truly commit to doing the daily work that needs to be done. Being mindful in every interaction, stopping using others for emotional support, reflecting on themselves, realizing they aren't more important than anyone else, and consistently acknowledging the feelings of others. The problem comes up when life gives them stress or sadness, which it always does, like not getting the parking spot they wanted, and these skills completely break down. The real test of a person is not how nice they are on good days, but how well they handle bad times. It is possible for things to change if someone with selfish traits is willing to put in the work. I agree that this idea is like trying to catch a horse. If you're going through narcissistic abuse, hoping that the narcissistic person in your life will change while you keep going through it is like betting on the Powerball to win your retirement, really not likely to happen. Concerned individuals who don't have a close relationship with a narcissist, perhaps only meeting them or having a passing acquaintance with them, may overhear them talking about how much they care about others and want to help those in need. At the same time, they often keep hurting the people they live with mentally. From the outside, these fake empaths may seem very caring and sensitive, which can make others unintentionally help them. This situation is like communal narcissism because it keeps the loop going for people who have been abused by narcissists and often have trouble believing in themselves. False shows of macro empathy like these can be very confusing and make us feel like we're in the wrong very quickly. Fight that urge, the thought that you're to blame. Now is the time to think about it. The person who has shown you lack of empathy can say the same thing about abstract ideas, faraway problems, and people they have never met, but they can't do it to the person standing right in front of them. One thing that sets narcissists apart is their ability to care about ideas or groups, but not real people. Self-righteous and social narcissists are more likely to show this trait. I think that the best way to figure out someone's true character is to look at how they treat the person who is physically present. Don't be fooled by someone who seems to care about people they don't even know while ignoring the person next to them. This false appearance of empathy is a big problem because it makes people wonder. It looks like they care about everyone but me. What do they have for those other people? I'm not even sure if it counts as real empathy. You're right, they don't show much care towards you. Let's talk more about the idea of performative sensitivity now. As you watch this movie, I want you to share your thoughts in the comments. For example, you could say something like, "Oh my goodness, I totally relate," and feel free to add any cases that make sense to you. Many of you may be able to relate to what I'm talking about because this is something that many of my clients have brought up, and I want to give you some words to describe what happens in these situations. Let us look into performative concern. First, let's talk about what empathy really means. After all, it's the most important thing we need to talk about when we're talking about selfishness, right? Narcissists have a hard time in close relationships because they don't have or show real empathy all the time. But people who are close to narcissists often show too much concern, if that's even possible. In my opinion, our world has a problem with humanity that needs to be fixed right away because it is very bad. The problem comes up when someone in a narcissistic relationship has a lot of understanding. Narcissists, on the other hand, go through life believing they are compassionate, and other people often believe them. How does this take place? How can people who don't care about others persuade others that they do? How do narcissists really think they can understand how others feel? So this brings up the idea of theatrical empathy, or maybe we should call it empathy light. Narcissists are great at doing things that make them look loving and understanding to other people, but only when other people are looking. These are the people who help an old person cross the street in public and make a big deal out of it, or who proudly offer to take out the trash at a dinner party. They can save a bird and post about it on social media, bring food to an old neighbor on a regular basis, or often get home with takeaway for everyone. You might be thinking, wow, you sound really skeptical as you read this. Those acts seem truly kind, don't you think? Let's look at this in more detail. Real empathy should be a quality that you can count on. So the important question for the person who feeds birds, serves food, or takes out the trash is what they do when everyone else has left the dinner party or when they're by themselves with their family or coworkers. Are they still caring when there aren't any people around? If the same person who cares about a small bird with an eyedropper is rude, angry, disrespectful, or abusive to those around them, then what we're seeing is just a show. This is called performative empathy. Giving gifts is another way that this performative kindness can show up. When it comes to giving gifts, narcissists can be very careful. Often the gifts are beautifully wrapped, given at the right time, and come with big gestures. But getting these gifts can be very disappointing, especially if the person who gave them to you has been rude, confused, or has let you down many times before. When they show up with a gift, it's like putting a layer of concrete over that painful link. Giving gifts throws a lot of people off balance. I tore up a check I got from a narcissistic family member earlier today that was meant to be a gift. I needed the money, but ripping up that check made me feel free because I cared more about my pride. When people get gifts from narcissists, on the other hand, many of them feel bad as soon as they see the gift. They start to rationalize by saying things like, "I don't know, it's a nice gesture. Maybe they're not so bad," or "maybe I'm being too harsh or unrealistic," and in the end, they give up their happiness for a $50 gift card. Remember, I promise you that you are worth much more than that gift. Also, the cycle of self-blame is linked to performative sensitivity. People often ask themselves, "Am I the one who is wrong?" The narcissist may look like they're saving all the grasshoppers and feeding the neighbors, but you're not. This can make you question your own humanity. You might be thinking, "Maybe I'm the one who doesn't have compassion, and they're really the good person," as they say. Of course, this view doesn't take into account the years they hurt your feelings. Narcissists can quickly convince others that they are good people by showing this kind of performative kindness. It's easy to be fooled when we see them doing nice things like taking out the trash or driving other people to the airport when it's busy. But it's not really empathic if they use that airport ride to influence you and keep reminding you of it for years. Still, narcissists get the approval and support they need by doing these things that seem kind. People often get the basics of empathy wrong and don't see how deep it goes. For example, many people think that easy acts of empathy like picking up trash or saving animals are enough. Being truly present with someone, fully involved with all of their experience, while trying to understand and respond to their emotions is what empathy is. Remember that picking up animals and emptying the trash can are not required chores. Real understanding goes much deeper and is based on two-way communication. It's important to remember that empathy includes thinking about how our words, actions, and body language affect the people around us. We should stay in this state of mind all the time, not just when we want praise or approval. We should also do it to keep good relationships with other people. While taking out the trash or saving a snake may be nice things to do, they don't mean you understand what they're going through. You can't make up for bad behavior like emotional abuse with something nice. In the simple, transactional mind of a narcissist, this is exactly how they act, which is why they are shocked when people say they don't have empathy. The idea of fake empathy makes the narcissist even more sure that they are really nice people. Because of this, telling them they are being mean makes them feel bad about themselves and ashamed. They often strike out at others, including you, if you question their idea of themselves as a kind and good person. So they keep doing these shallow things to give the impression that they understand, which they will then use against you over and over again to show that they don't really care. Many of you may see this as a type of group vanity, and you're totally right. This is how community narcissists usually act. They do good things to get praise and approval, but they aren't really kind. They do many things like saving things or people, giving expensive gifts, giving money, or taking everyone out to a fancy meal. To get praise and be seen as caring heroes, they might even take out the trash at events. As a trait of all narcissists, performative empathy makes them act this way, whether they are pompous or self-righteous. It can be hard to figure out how to perform empathy, so it's important to tell the difference between the two. This kind of empathy is like putting on a show. It's not real empathy, it's just an act. It's a planned move to look kind when other people are around, which gives the narcissist more chances to manipulate. "I'm a nice person. Look at what I've done." They might say later when they want to get rid of you or start a fight. At best, this is a watered-down version of empathy. At worst, it turns fake kindness into another form of abuse, while enablers cheer and say, "See how great they are." Because of this, you should be very wary of narcissists who offer gifts, favors, or help, because they might leave you feeling lied to and strengthen those harmful trauma bonds. When you realize that these fake empathy moments are just acts, you can stop seeing narcissists as truly compassionate and stop feeling bad about not returning their supposed kindness. It's just a performance. There's no real feeling there. Recognize this difference. For those who have been following along so far, if you've ever thought, oh my gosh, yes, they would do all these things, and everyone else would say they're so empathetic, but I didn't feel that way, then you really understand the difference. When you understand their behavior, you can say, oh, this is just a performance, but it doesn't feel real. Real understanding is quiet, kind, and personal. It doesn't look for praise or approval. It comes from a deep link within us, letting us help people we care about, and even people who are new to our lives. Today, I'd like to talk about an interesting question that has been brought to my attention more than once. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and views on this subject. The main question is whether narcissists really think they are caring, compassionate, and understanding when they say they are. Do they really believe that they are unique individuals? That's what the question is really about. So what's your point of view? Do you believe that they really believe this? What happened the last time someone selfish said, I am very empathetic? Do you think they mean it? Well, the truth is that they do. The most annoying and deceptive things about narcissists are not only how they treat us emotionally, but also how they say they are great, kind, patient, and most importantly, empathetic. If you laughed or gave them a sideways look, they might have a fit of anger because they really see themselves in that good light. Have you ever been through this? How often have you heard a narcissist brag about how nice, patient, and caring they are? We need to know that we're not the only ones going through this, so please share your stories in the comments. Personally, I've been in this position many times. What about your talks about narcissists' insecurities? You might ask. Those insecurities go deep and aren't recognized. People who are hostile might be able to understand that their hostile behavior is a defense strategy if they were truly aware of their weaknesses. They might be able to accept weakness instead of being cruel now that they know this. Seeing an ego face their weakness, on the other hand, is very uncommon. Take this as a very rare exception if you have seen it happen. Most of the time, when they do something wrong and are criticized for it, they feel bad about themselves, which makes them ashamed and more likely to act out against the people who make them feel ashamed. They put the blame on other people instead of taking responsibility. Do you recognize this pattern of selfishness, shame, and blame? Therefore, narcissists hold on to a rigid and false belief that they are unique people. Their arrogance is fueled by this way of thinking, which shows they have very little understanding. They would have to face the uncomfortable truth if they didn't constantly say how great they are, that they are rude, demanding, and lack humanity. They would feel too unstable to admit this to be true. If you repeat an idea enough times, you will eventually believe it for real, and that's exactly what happened with them. Look how empathic I am, they say as they go through life. The problem starts when a narcissist talks about their virtues all the time, like how patient, empathetic, or compassionate they are meant to be. This can feel like a huge form of gaslighting to those around them. It's confusing when someone who acts so badly keeps trying to show that they are a good person. Over time, this can even make people in their circle question what they thought they knew. When the narcissist seems so sure of themselves, they may start to wonder if they were wrong about the narcissist. That's a huge mental mistake. You can't really talk to a narcissist in any serious way because of this. It's like dumping water on stone. It just slides off without being absorbed when you try to give them feedback. In fact, if you try to criticize them, they will probably get angry. On the surface, you're questioning their deeply held belief that they are gentle and kind. Under the surface, you're making people feel bad about themselves and ashamed. But the result is always the same: explosive anger, no matter what the reason is. Over the years, I've worked with a huge number of pairs where one partner was obviously narcissistic. Most of the time, the egotistical person would be sure that they were good, kind, and committed to the relationship. The partner who wasn't selfish would often just sit there with wide eyes, almost happy that someone else was in the room to see what was really going on. I would try to point out the patterns of behavior and talk about how their partner might have seen them as mean or careless during these meetings. The narcissist was supposed to be able to see things from their partner's point of view, even if they couldn't accept they weren't really caring or understanding. But that was a bridge we didn't cross very often. The egotistical person would usually respond in a way that I could guess. They would try to avoid responsibility, blame others, or say I was being biased or picky. In the end, They wouldn't admit their mistakes or change their view of themselves as a good person, even when their actions were clearly at odds with that view. Most of the time, they would stop going to therapy altogether. It's been a long time since I did couples counseling with narcissists because of this trend. I had an experience with a narcissist not long ago. This person is known for being rude, angry, and focused on themselves. When they don't get their way, they get very angry and rude because they're used to always getting what they want. This person's impatience was making things hard for someone else, but that person generally doesn't say anything. I chose to step in and have a talk. I told them in a light-hearted way that they needed to be more patient, implying that their impatience could become a problem because what was coming would require a lot of tolerance. The jerk really lost it. I can tell you that. They lost it with anger. Just to be clear, I wasn't even saying they were a bad person, even though they really are. Everything I did was just suggest that we'd all need to be more patient in this situation. After that, they got a lot of texts saying they were the nicest, most patient, and most understanding person ever, which of course wasn't even close to being true. I could easily give you hundreds of cases that show how far from the truth that was. Following this, they put the blame on me, saying I was making things worse and making myself look like the bad guy. It was completely confusing because this person thought they were the most patient and kind person in the world, even though they were actually one of the quickest and most selfish people I've ever met. The twisting of reality was crazy, and that's the main thing to remember about narcissism. It's all about having a skewed view of yourself. We would have to get around this narcissist in order to deal with the problem at hand, as this situation made clear. It told me for the millionth time that these kinds of people don't change, and it's pointless to try to correct their unrealistic view of themselves. When I tried to give this person who is always anxious useful feedback, it only made me more frustrated. In my heart, I knew they wouldn't change, but I had hoped we could find a better way to deal with the bigger problem that was coming up. I should have known better. The smartest thing to do would have been to stay away from them and figure out a way to get around their behavior right away. In the end, it took a gigantic amount of time and money, a lot more than it needed to. This is what it's really like to be around selfish people. In addition to being hard on your emotions, it can also cost you a lot of money. One thing that all narcissists have in common is that they are very sensitive to any kind of criticism or feedback. This is because any criticism makes them question their deeply held belief that they are great, excellent people. They are sure that this picture is true. As recently as a few weeks ago, I tried to give gentle advice again, and, as expected, it went extremely badly. It really doesn't work. It doesn't ever. Studies show that narcissists often have a twisted view of themselves, which I find interesting. They often think they are much better people than they really are, exaggerating their accomplishments, kindness, and success. Their faith in themselves has little to do with who they really are. Most people have skewed ideas about themselves and often think badly or undervalue themselves. Narcissists, on the other hand, give themselves too high of ratings when they are asked. In the time I worked with narcissistic clients, they all saw themselves as kind, giving, and misunderstood, and they were sure that everyone else was taking advantage of them because no one saw how great they were. They had the wrong idea. Even though they didn't have empathy, they really thought they did. Their idea of themselves was so different from the truth that it was almost like they were dreaming. What about the weak narcissist? You might ask. Really? They don't see themselves so well, do they? That's an interesting turn of events. Vulnerable narcissists may say things like, "Nobody likes me. I haven't done anything important. Things never work out for me." But then they'll often say, "I don't deserve this because I'm so kind," which brings the conversation back to how good they think they are. They think they're very kind-hearted even when they're acting inappropriately. This kind of skewed thought can also be found in self-righteous and communal narcissism. Communal narcissists look for approval by doing good things for others. They think they are very helpful and giving, but others don't see how they are emotionally abusing them. Narcissists, on the other hand, are stuck in their sense of moral superiority and don't see how their constant judging of others hurts others. Both types of narcissists really think they are the most moral, caring, and perfect people in the world. Because narcissists are so set on a false picture of themselves, it can be really hard to understand how they think about themselves. It's important to know that expecting real growth or change is pointless, but it's also important not to let their words make us think otherwise. Even if someone says they are the nicest person in the world, that shouldn't change the fact that we've had bad experiences with them that make us feel bad about ourselves. It's strange that someone would feel the need to say how nice they are, but deeds don't lie. Are they really trying to be nice? Most people don't think much of themselves, which makes it easier to believe the narcissist when they say over and over again how kind, caring, and wonderful they are. Even though it's hard, we need to remember ourselves not to let their inflated sense of self-worth change the truth. When the narcissists in your group start bragging about how nice and generous they are, try your hardest not to smile ironically. You don't want to make them mad. Sure, you're not missing anything. Trust me, a lot of people in these cases wonder, am I missing something? Their strongly held and skewed view of themselves is so strong that they seem to believe the lies they tell themselves, which can really mess with how you see things. Things aren't always true just because someone says them. Thanks once more.